Hello, I'm Persephone, and today I'm going to talk to you about how the patriarchy actually harms men. I know that we usually have in mind that women are the ones suffering the most in a patriarchal culture and society, but I'm going to share some of my own experiences and why I came to the conclusion that men collectively actually lose more from the patriarchy. I come from an Eastern European culture. I won't specify which one, specifically for privacy reasons and also because they share many similarities. And in my lifetime, I experienced direct and indirect suicide of 5 male family members. By suicide, I mean one of them had a hunting accident in the forest, another one starved himself to death because of depression, a third one stopped taking his heart pills, although he had a heart condition that he knew he would pass away if he stopped. And okay, I'm not going to continue with the gore stories. I'm only going to say that all of these men were supposedly thriving in a culture that treated women as limited, incompetent, stupid, and existing purely as someone to control, someone that has to add to a man's life. Things were so bad that when I was born, my mother told me that the first thought that came into her head when they brought me as a baby to her to hold was like, wow, this is a girl and she's not pretty enough. How is she going to get married? Not getting married in that culture for a woman was, oh my God, you just erase yourself from existence. So what was happening when I was growing up is that women were expected to be thin or attractive according to the standards of men. They were expecting to have long hair, they were expected to cook, to clean, to have children. Being child-free was considered a mental disorder. We were discouraged from getting masculine jobs, while jobs that they were quote-unquote feminine were preferred, like teacher, nurse, something nurturing, and so on. And in my house, my parents are narcissists, but still everyone's house was pretty much like that, more or less. My father was making all the major decisions. He was handling most of the finances, and my parents had a shared bank account, so if my mother wanted to buy something for herself, there had to be a negotiation. Although my father had a part of his own salary that was just for him, and no one was allowed to question him and ask, what are you doing with your money? So you would expect that when things were that way, the ones suffering would be the women. Women who do not have children or a boyfriend or a husband are seen as failures in this culture, ostracized and shamed. Yet the men were self-harming and self-destructing, at least in my family, but also in many other people that I knew, a lot more than women. Why was that? Supposedly, if men are so powerful and they control everything in that culture and they have all the money, why was that happening? Because it's essentially a scam. The patriarchy is a scam. And I'm going to tell you why. When they say that the man is the head of the family, they mean that essentially it's only one man who is the head of a specific family. So if you grew up as a son in that family, you don't have any control whatsoever. You're going to have to think what your parent thinks, your father specifically, follow his religion, follow his sexual preferences. For example, you cannot be anything but straight because homosexuality and any other sexual expression is being seen as sin and shameful. You have to work for the family business in many times, and that can actually expand way after you become a legal adult. I know of a guy who's 71, he has 3 sons who are in their 40s, and they still have to obey his every word because they lost their jobs because of the pandemic and they had to go back to work for the family business. And that creates an insane abusive circle because he's oppressing his sons all day and they go back home to actually take it out on their wives and their children. So just because you're a male doesn't mean you're going to have any power or money or authority whatsoever. Usually you start having it once your father becomes too old to react or dies. You also have to have a very specific appearance, very rigid interests, and even more rigid behaviors. Men who are not tall are shamed. Men who are fat are shamed. Men who have non-traditional interests, for example, someone could be artistic and drawing, they're saint. The person in my family who committed suicide hunting, I could bet all of my life savings that he wasn't really into hunting, but everyone else was, so he would be bullied into participating. And the idea that you are more free to express yourself and do anything you want, like I said earlier, applies only if you are the head of the family. Otherwise, you just have to deal with a different type of oppression all the time. And that doesn't sound like someone who has a lot of power or a lot of control over their life to me. When I was growing up, the men and my male cousins, the sons of the friends of the family, were also oppressed, miserable, and constantly lying to their parents, constantly sneaking out, trying to do their own thing, or coping with alcohol and drugs, which was awful, and it didn't really help them. Mental health problems are very common, and you will not be encouraged to seek solutions. You're going to be expected to just toughen it out or pull yourself up by the bootstraps, that awful expression, and most likely you are going to be suffering until my family member, that depression got the best out of him. Also, because the women cannot divorce and end up emotionally deprived, or they don't have any support. There is so much emotional incest going on, especially the mothers using the sons as substitutes for the absent partner that they don't have, that the guy they marry usually falls out of love with them. So they're going to resent any woman that you want to date, and if you decide to get married, the legendary awful mother-in-law is most likely going to be your mother. So imagine how is your life going to be if you're the average person in that family. You're going to have to obey your father until you are an old man yourself. Everyone is going to have a say in your life if you're not the alpha male who's the head of the family, and it gets better. When you grow old, everyone is going to be so fed up with you, they're going to toss you into some retirement home under the pretext of, well, they have to work now, they have their own children now, and that's the circle of life. I have lost count of the number of men that I've seen that they just put their fathers, who abused them all of their lives because of the patriarchy, to the biggest hellhole they could find, the cheapest, worst retirement home, and they were like, well, that serves you right. So that's most likely going to be you too if you participate in that circle. And if you're a person that doesn't want children, if you're a person that you want a divorce, if you're a person that you want to change your life, everyone will do whatever they can to hold you down and to make sure you will not go anywhere, because being different is going to still be punished unless you manage to be so abusive and so ruthless and have so much money and so much power, physical, mental, practical, in every way, that you can oppress other people to constantly enforce your will. This is an awful way to live, and men who are not psychopaths or narcissists, they're just going to suffer. This is a system that promotes only people who are disordered, and they enjoy abusing others, they enjoy oppressing others, and they solve their problems with violence. I decided to make these videos because I see a lot of people talking about what's happening in the world right now and saying that we're going back to Gilead and doing references from The Handmaid's Tale. If you see the men in The Handmaid's Tale, there were also plenty of men abused, tortured, and everyone assumes that they're just going to be Waterford in the first season, but they end up Waterford. What happened to him in the last season that I watched, I'm not going to spoiler it, okay? Just some food for thought.